Hello, my name is Derek. I run the Bonus Commentary podcast here on YouTube, and tonight we are going to be talking about the newest addition to the Shin Heroes universe. That's right, we're talking about Shin Kamen Rider. This is actually my first introduction to Kamen Rider, period. So I figured it would be a good idea to have somebody to talk to who would actually know something a bit more in-depth about Kamen Rider. So I'm bringing along my friend Sean. Sean from... Well, actually, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Sean, tell the people who you are.
So, hello everyone. My name is Sean Barry. I am a writer for Asian Movie Pulse, where I do reviews of films, movie, and television that are related to Asian cinema and Asian television. I also do interviews from time to time. You may probably also know me from my collaborations with Titan Goji, aka Davis, on his channel Titan Goji, appearing on his show Toku Titan Cast. I used to be very active on the Twitter page Shots Japanese Cinema, and I'm still active there from time to time, but thanks for having me on, man.
Hey, man, it's my pleasure. So we're going to start with, like I said, I know nothing about Kamen Rider, so I went into this blind, and I think it would be a good idea to start this with, what is your history with Kamen Rider?
My history with Kamen Rider really began when I finally saw the movie Kamen Rider Zeto, directed by Keita Amamiya. And I had never seen anything Kamen Rider beforehand. And so that was my introduction to the franchise, and I was completely blown away just by how mesmerizing it is from a production standpoint, but also just it's high concept, style of basically it's the basic premise of Kamen Rider is an ordinary person becomes experimented on and becomes a cyborg grasshopper being known as Kamen Rider. And from then on, I started exploring more of Kamen Rider, including the original 1971 television series, which I highly enjoyed. Very long, though. I should add, Derek, it's a long series. In fact, I believe it's just under 100 episodes.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah, that's all. It's only 98 episodes, to be specific. The original Kamen Rider TV series is only 98 episodes. And that's just one of the many things. I mean, that's where it all began, but that's not even scratching the surface. There's been so many Kamen Rider TV shows. There's been Kamen Rider movies. I would say, though, the Kamen Rider on the whole is probably more popular in terms of television. Though also it's popular in manga, because as you know, Kamen Rider was also a manga. And the creator of Kamen Rider is, of course, Shotaro Ishinomori, who is a phenomenal manga artist. And definitely I cannot recommend enough. You should definitely explore his work. And definitely give the original Kamen Rider manga, which was actually being made simultaneously when the original TV series was being released. So let that sink in. Kamen Rider is both... There's so much to admire about Kamen Rider because it has really thought-provoking themes of, like, what does it mean to be human, self-identity, but also, coming to terms of not just what you want to do with your life. Basically, individuality is a big theme with Kamen Rider. There's also a lot of inspiration from history during World War II, specifically with the Nazis and the Imperial Japanese Army, specifically when it comes to the villainous organization that is synonymous in the original Kamen Rider, Shocker. So there's a lot to unravel, but there's also an enjoyable nature to Kamen Rider. It's got over-the-top, really impressive action scenes. It's got colorful villains. So it's a franchise that there's so much to admire about it thematically, yet it's also so fun and entertaining at the same time. So that's basically why Kamen Rider is so special. Besides, of course, the toy sales, because also toy sales are a big result of Kamen Rider's existence.
I mean, usually the best franchises have the best toys, so I mean, there's got to be something there. So with that, what were your expectations going into Shin Kamen Rider?
I was excited, but I was cautious at the same time because, it was interesting that there was going to be basically a reimagining of the original 1971 TV series. Although it's funny I say that because when we get to the film itself, it's not entirely that. It is and it isn't, if that makes any sense. But to be short, I was excited. But of course, I don't want to get too excited because there's nothing more frustrating than when you get excited for something and then you're so let down when you finally watch it.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. The reason we're here, Sean, what was your opinion on Shin Kamen Rider?
It was good. Anyways,
you heard it here first.
anyways, check out my articles in Asian Movie Pulse. No, in all seriousness, I thought it was great. I thought it was a blast. I thought it was, if anything, it exceeded my expectations in a way because all of my, concerns were pretty much kind of tossed aside when I finally saw the movie. And then it went above and beyond. Like, I was entertained. I was, it was a blast from beginning to end, but also I was emotionally invested in the story that it set up and how it managed to basically take the premise of the original, because it is a reimagining of the original 1971 series, but it's also a different take on it, if that makes any sense, because there's also a lot of elements taken from the original manga. So there's a lot to unravel, but I thought it was a blast, and I absolutely loved it, and I look forward to when I can see it again.
I had no expectations because, like I had mentioned at the top, that this was my first Kamen Rider anything, and I'll admit to some level of concern when I had heard from people that had seen it prior were warning that this is maybe not a good introduction point for new fans. But I still got my ticket. I sat down with it, and I walked away smiling. I had such a good time with this movie. It was action-packed. I loved almost every fight scene. I thought the acting was much more notable in this particular entry of the Shin Heroes universe, and just how anime, like the anime inspiration was clear and present, and I was there for it. I was having so much fun. And of course, like, even somebody who had never seen any of the original series, I was able to catch like the nods and winks to the original, like in terms of choreography and like the numerous henchmen just showing up literally out of a frame and characters appearing and disappearing, entire sets just appearing and disappearing. It was great. I loved it. I'll say that I don't understand the the Easter eggs, every Easter egg rather. So like when I was meeting these characters, it was for the first time. I didn't know about the overall theming of some of the Shin Kamen Rider, some of the Kamen Rider stories, where, like you were mentioning earlier, where there were themes of what it means to be human. And I think that's where this movie shines, is in that theming. It's very clear and present. I know I personally had a fantastic time with my theater audience. The entire audience was enraptured. It was like going to a concert. Like, I would say it was that same level of energy in a movie theater. Every time they posed and they changed, everybody lost their minds. It was wonderful. There were guys that came fully dressed up. I wanted to get video of it, but during the end credits, they play the original theme, and the entire theater was singing along with it. And it was kind of I hate to use the phrase, it was like almost a religious experience. It felt like I was going to church, the Church of Kamen Rider. But my question to you is, did you have a similar experience? How was your theater experience with this?
My theater experience was also wonderful. A lot of people, similar to yours, a lot of people did show up dressed up as Kamen Rider or wearing t-shirts, or even had props, like their own little makeshift props of like homemade Kamen Rider masks, and it was awesome. And also, the audience, like, I think the audience definitely also added to the experience because, at like the people reacted to the Easter eggs when it was funny, people were laughing when it was spectacular, people were cheering. When it got more serious, there was dead silence in the theater. It was a really fun experience. It also helped that I saw it with a good friend of mine, and believe it or not, I ended up running into former college classmates when I was there. Like,
That's awesome.
biggest coincidence. So I guess you could say that in a way it is a religious experience. Kamen Rider brings people together the same
Yep.
way that the way that, like, say, a church session brings people together. Um, and also, similarly, when the famous Kamen Rider song started playing, everyone, including me, was singing. It was like a karaoke session that even if not everyone was singing on key, you just admired just the passion behind it.
What did you like about the film?
Ooh, this might take a while, Derek.
Okay.
Sorry. I mean, for starters, I was really impressed with how they presented the story because one of my biggest concerns going into this was because, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, but also not really because it's kind of been made obvious by the trailers. Is that the story is almost presented in that kind of television episodic format, very similarly to the way that Shin Ultraman presented its storyline, where it was kind of like taking nods from the original series and like presenting it almost in like a TV show format. And I was a little concerned about that going in because, and I liked it in Shin Ultraman, but like, sometimes you can't replicate the same magic twice. I was really impressed with how they did it. I also loved that it embraced the same television cuts and edits of the original TV series because in the original series, that was a regular occurrence. 1 minute we cut from this scene, next minute, the next angle, already time has passed and they're getting ready to fight. The fight's over, time has passed, and now they're talking about something else. Like that I loved that. It was very, it added a charm to it, and it also like it embraced like the kind of like that's wacky 70s 80s editing, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. I just want to echo real quick the pacing. One of my complaints with Shin Ultraman was the fact that it was, again, as a newer fan, I maybe like a handful of episodes into Ultraman, I felt like I was trying to keep up the entire time, whereas this one, actually, I felt like it took time to breathe, at least enough time without being... It never felt like it dragged. Everything like made sense. There was time to stop and grieve and understand and process. And I think that's absolutely one of the film's stronger suits.
I think what definitely helps this movie is that I really cared about the characters. I cared what was going on. I was invested in the conflict with the heroes trying to defeat the organization known as Shocker, which I love that they actually break down what each letter represents a full word, going over the origins of Shocker. I cared about the characters, particularly the two leads. I was really invested in Takashi Honga's journey because what he goes through. And so much happens in the first act alone. Like, it feels like you've been on a whole journey in just like the first 25 minutes alone. I really was invested in what was going on, but like I cared about the characters. Like I really cared about for me, the two best characters in the movie were Honga and Ruriko. Like I wanted to see them succeed, but also I'm glad you brought this up. There's a lot of action in this movie, and it's great action scenes, but I like that there's more breather moments in this movie. In fact, that's one thing I like in this more than Shin Ultraman. Could argue that with Shin Ultraman, it's like this moment, this moment, this moment. It's kind of like rolling all the cards out really fast and not really allowing you to process it entirely. Whereas this, you'll have like some really spectacular action scenes, and then you'll have like a nice good 10 or 20 minutes just devoted to the characters being developed, and I really appreciated about that. I agree. I thought it was well paced. I know there have been some criticisms about the pacing, and I can understand that. For me, though, I was actually I bought it personally, and I was able to. I cared so much about what was going on that like I didn't mind that there were moments that were a little slower. And on top of that, not only are Honga and Ruriko great characters, but we have other great characters. We have another rider that gets introduced, Ichimonji, who is like a great opposite to Honga. It was basically like a yin and yang type of situation
Absolutely.
because
Yes.
Honga was more like really like coming to terms with his new existence. And meanwhile, Ichimonji, he's charismatic, he's like dropping funny lines, he's a lot more kind of more, how do you say, he's kind of like if you put Batman slash Bruce Wayne with Spider-Man slash Peter Parker. It's like that's the best way I could describe the two writers, especially when they eventually do interact with one another.
Yeah, they definitely bring out one another's strong suits whilst being totally opposite of one another. Ichimonji is personally my favorite of the two. Honga was great. He is absolutely the reason the movie needs to be focused on him. But Ichimonji is such a, like, by comparison, he's like this weird breath of fresh air. Like, I don't know how else to describe it, but when he kind of cracked a joke, it felt right in the moment. To echo his own line, it just felt right. He belonged in the movie. I know there's a second writer, but I was worried that might have been an easy shoehorn. But he was Hongo's foil. He needed to be there to kind of bring out another side of him. And also Hongo brought out a side of Ichimonji that he didn't even know he had. It was great. It was great to see a character introduced without necessarily being shoehorned in.
He has a purpose to the narrative, and he's well incorporated into the narrative. I also like that with Ichimonji they actually do ease, because there are brief moments like in the beginning of the movie where we see him like briefly, but then it's like little, it's almost like teasing, and it leaves the audience to be like, I mean, I'm sure like longtime Kamen Rider fans would be like, oh, I know who that is, but like the cool thing is that newcomers will probably be like, who is this guy? And
No,
then
I did.
and then when they finally, do put him front and center into the storyline, it's like you're just mesmerized. And also he's funny. He's like really, really funny.
Yeah, he was a great time.
The acting was fantastic. I mean, Sosuke Ikematsu nailed it as Honga. I mean, Sosuke Ikematsu, I think, is a very versatile actor. I'm not sure. Have you seen the movie The Last Samurai, out of curiosity?
Yes. Many years ago.
Do you remember the little child character in The Last Samurai?
I certainly do.
That's Sosuke Ikematsu.
Ah, that's amazing. I had no idea.
Here he is. He's all grown up, and now he's playing Kamen Rider.
Damn. Wow, what a glow up.
Yeah, I feel like it's mainly in terms of like the performances. I think it's really him, the actress who plays Ruriko, Minami Hamambe, who plays Ruriko. She was also great because, initially she kind of plays the role as like a stoic, kind of cold, distant character, but then as the movie progresses, we slowly see more and more of like her personal self, if that makes any sense. And I have to say that there were some scenes with her that really like touched me emotionally. I won't spoil, but there's a specific moment in the movie, and I'm sure you probably know which one I'm talking about, Derek, where she presents a certain message. Like, that was I really was like, wow, that was great. Also the villains, I thought the villains were great. You had your over-the-top campy ones like Man-Bat, who's trying to create a virus, and then you also have, in my opinion, the true villain of the movie, Ichiro. But they actually do something really interesting with Ichiro where he's the antagonist, but he's also... I mean, how would you describe Ichiro, personally, for you as a newcomer?
His demeanor, like it definitely felt like anime inspired. He goes from like it almost like I thought he was an AI at first because we were also dealing with the character. Was it J or K?
Right. No, there was J and then there was K.
Okay. We had the character K, so I thought it was an AI taking over the world situation, and then he is like almost like attached to his chair via little IV tubes. It was interesting to see him go from a character that moves very little to watching him move with almost ballerina movements.
You're right. He spends most of the time at first just kind of chilling in the throne that he's connected to. And then once like he like disconnects from it, I agree, there's almost like a theater dance quality to his movements.
You know what? I just put it together. He's like a puppet. He's basically a marionette, and those strings are what are normally holding him back are what's actually helping him move. That's interesting. I wonder if that was intentional. But yeah, for this character that I had never met before, he was stoic whilst being so kind of initially floppy, I guess I could say. The personalities didn't quite mesh until the third act, and I won't talk about that for now. It was interesting. It was so out of the realm of what I'm used to that it made for a memorable villain.
Because he really is the main villain. I mean, I know as a whole, technically, the organization Shocker can be considered the antagonist, and I mean, we do go into the origins of how Shocker was formed, and we do meet the original founder and how Shocker set out to do what it set out to do, but like it's really Ichiro who becomes it's weird, he's the main villain, but he's also in a way not the main villain, if that makes any sense.
The action, I gotta say, so much fun. Oh my god, like you could if they weren't busting up behind the camera and just having a great time with it, I would be genuinely surprised. And just like, okay, the other thing that kind of threw me for a loop, and you can chime in on this, how bloody it got. I was not prepared for it. I think this probably is like, save Shin Godzilla, which had gallons of blood for one singular creature. This was blood for like a dozen people. It was crazy. Is that something that Kamen Rider is known for, is the amount of gore?
Yeah, Kamen Rider can get pretty violent. In fact, the newest TV series, Kamen Rider Black Sun, arguably, in many respects, takes the gore to an even way more disturbing level. So Kamen Rider is no stranger to getting pretty violent. I will say here in Shin Kamen Rider, it almost felt like it was comedic at times, just because of how much blood. I mean, a great example is that opening fight scene, just how much blood is spraying just from getting punched by Rider. And how like one punch basically drains them completely of their blood and just paints the forest ground. But then there is more kind of like brutal moments in terms of the violence, without spoiling, especially when a certain character gets axed off later in the movie, where the violence definitely had more of a kind of a real grittiness to it. Mm-hmm. So it's like there's a nice blend of like being over the top and almost comedic at times, but still having a very brutal edge to it. Especially also when a character like gets a limb broken, I have to say. Also, I didn't mention this earlier, music. I was really impressed with the music because you have some great renditions of classic tunes from the original Kamen Rider series, but you also have original tracks exclusive for the movie, and I thought those, for me personally, I thought the music score was more memorable here than Shin Ultraman personally. Okay,
right on. The music for me blended together in such a way that I didn't know the difference between the original score and a new track. I think that's a great analogy for the entire film, is that the new stuff and the old stuff blend together in such a way that it creates a seamless experience. Cinematography was... Okay. that is actually one of my gripes. So for the first and second acts, it was fantastic. I loved the mixed media. I loved shot for shot. It was great. I was on board. I loved it. But towards the end of the film, when we reach our climax, I felt like the cinematography and choreography take a huge back seat. Characters are almost impossible to discern from. There's moments of horrendous shaky cam that make it, like, actually literally shook me out of the experience. The third act, I guess I could say, is less of the third act as a whole and more of just the climax. Had some cinematography that was not great, in my opinion.
That's fair. I did have that a little bit with the climax, but not so much with the last fight scene, but more so with a certain action scene that takes place before the final fight. That takes place, on motorcycles and in the tunnel. I will admit that was, in my opinion, the most problematic action sequence in the movie, because it wasn't just the lighting that was my issue, but so I actually liked how CGI was incorporated into the movie for the most part, because it seemed like it took advantage of the less advanced technology that Japan has when it comes to CGI, and used it for some of the moves with the fight scenes, like the flying kick, for example. Like that looked cool. I will say the CGI in the tunnel sequence, mainly that's one of the few times where I'm like, okay, that just looks bad.
Yeah, it really did. That was definitely one of my I would say that is probably the worst part of the movie, which honestly is not saying too much, because it's only on for maybe 5 minutes.
I guess it's also a little disappointing because we did see some integration of the motorcycles in some of the previous action scenes, and it was great in those scenes. So it is a little disappointing that it kind of. I also think it's the only action scene that dragged a bit. To be honest, I'm like, there's just a part of me that's like, all right, let's get to the final fight already.
I was going to ask, did you have any other gripes with the film?
I guess one of my only other gripes maybe is that, I won't say, but maybe,
Don't worry, I have 150 subscribers. Nobody's gonna listen.
I will agree that while the action is great, and I think the editing for the most part is solid, I will agree that in some moments the editing did get a little too choppy. Okay,
that's fair.
I think the worst offender is that one action scene in the tunnel. We're just hammering the tunnel scene of the movie, and I've noticed that seems to be a lot of people's least favorite sequence in the movie is that particular sequence.
I think it's because the film otherwise is so well done and so well thought out that scene just doesn't work. It just doesn't fit. It's a bummer because it's supposed to be the first time we see the two riders working together. But we can't see.
At least the last fight scene, it brought me back in. Then I was on board. And then of course, it greatly showed off, Ichiro's powers in that final fight. And also, yes. I was dramatically invested in that fight.
The fight with Ichiro versus the two, it showed why he was a threat. They established that they took away a good chunk of his power, but he was still able to hold them both off. He was able to do it so effortlessly that, he made it look like a dance. And that was kind of brilliant to me. Seeing all three of these combatants so drained of their energy that they're fighting to stand, and you understand why. Was very well done. But that sequence does have the shaky cam I was referring to, and I maybe it's to show just how tired they are, but I'm just too busy going, why is he shaking the camera so damn much? Just hold the shot.
I didn't mind it personally in that particular scene. I was more bothered by it the sequence before, because in there I felt like it had a purpose to emphasizing just the dramatic struggle that the characters were really going through in that particular scene.
Since we kind of dunked on that whole tunnel sequence, any final positive thoughts you want to bring to the table?
I really liked how certain story elements were slowly revealed as the movie went along, because there'd be moments in the movie where we get like a quick cut to something and you don't realize it the first time you watch it, but then you watch it again and you realize that there's so much backstory in just those few seconds that a flashback will show. And then when we finally learn the backstory of a lot of our characters, it really hits you emotionally, especially when we learn the backstory of why Honga is the way he is emotionally.
God, he was so great. In terms of like all of his deliveries to me, he went from being unsure to being the heroic archetype to being like kind of lost and refinding himself. And I think I understand why Kamen Rider fans are as like almost feverish for the character. And it's because I understand this now because of his acting. And if he is a good example of Kamen Rider, like, I'm on board. Ichimonji was also a fantastic addition, and I hope we get to see more of him. All right, cool, man. Well, any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
I thought Shin Kamen Rider was a great film, and I think it's another solid addition to the Shin Japan Heroes universe. I mean, there's a lot to say. I mean, it's well-paced, it's exciting, it's got great action scenes, it's acted well, it's funny. We didn't really touch on that. There's a lot of really funny, dry humor throughout the movie, too. But then when it gets emotional, it really, like, it hits you right in the feels. And that's not easy to do, to balance out a lot of humor with some heart-wrenching drama. I guess I wish that the movie had an extended theatrical run, because the only other theatrical showing will be on June 5th. But hopefully, maybe there'll be a popular demand and there'll be more screenings of Shin Kamen Rider here in America for, more extended periods. But yeah, I guess to wrap it up, go see the movie if you can, because it's great.
And if you've never seen Kamen Rider, don't let that be an excuse. Because, like, if you like this style of tokusatsu, if you like Henshin Heroes, you don't have to have seen a single episode to actually enjoy the film, or at least I didn't. It delivers the story in a very well and thought out way. The action is all fun. It's everything you hope for, and the acting definitely seals the deal and definitely wants you leaving more. So go see it, like Sean said. And again, Sean, dude, thank you so much for agreeing to sit down and talk with me about this. Will you be discussing Shin Kamen Rider on your socials?
Yes, I am currently working on a review of Shin Kamen Rider that I will soon publish on Asian Movie Pulse, so definitely be on the lookout for that.
You heard it here first, folks. Again, Sean, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you thought of Shin Kamen Rider. Tell me about your experiences, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you so much, and be sure to take care of yourselves up there, everybody.